Welcome to the first chapter of this 3-chapter M-STEP test administration training. In the first chapter, the tasks that need to be completed before testing begins are covered. Chapter 2 will discuss during testing tasks, and Chapter 3 discusses tasks completed after testing. To begin, this before testing presentation will share what is new for the 2023 administration, resources that will help you throughout the test administration, important information about student supports and accommodations, how to complete before testing tasks that are done in the OEAA secure site and in the DRC Insight portal, and finally, how to prepare students and staff for M-STEP administration. In this section, I will discuss what's new for the 2023 M-STEP administration. The OEAA has developed an electronic device policy for testing, which is available in the Assessment Integrity Guide and the M-STEP Test Administration Manual. Students are not permitted to access any non-testing electronic device during testing. All student electronic devices must be powered off and stored away from the student work area during testing. For students testing online, students cannot access the testing device for any purpose other than testing during the test session. This includes after a student has submitted a test, they must not use the testing device for any purpose while the test session is occurring. Staff must remain focused on the test administration during the entire test session. Cell phones should not be used or accessed unless there is an emergency that requires its use. Wearable technology is discouraged, but if worn, must be set to airplane mode. Test content can never be recorded or photographed for any purpose, and staff should not be engaged in other work during the test administration. Updates have been made for assessment security training. First, for test administrators, there is a new Assessment Security for Test Administrators document that test administrators can read to fill their assessment security training requirement. This document condenses all of the information from the Assessment Integrity Guide that test administrators need to know into a few pages. The document is found as an appendix in all of the test administrators' directions and manual documents, the M-STEP Test Administration Manual, and the Assessment Integrity Guide. Test administrators can still choose to complete the MDE Assessment Security modules through Michigan Virtual in place of reading the Assessment Security for Test Administrators document. They are only required to do one, not both. The requirements for assessment security training for district and building assessment coordinators have not changed. They must complete the MDE Assessment Security Training modules on Michigan Virtual and read the Assessment Integrity Guide. The MDE Assessment Security course has had significant updates to reflect the new electronic device policy and other important new information. Therefore, the refresher course is not available in spring 2023. Everyone who completes the Assessment Security course through Michigan Virtual must complete the entire course. 2 updates have been made to TTS Directions functionality. First, the audio check screen has a skip option available. On mathematics, science, and social studies tests that do not have TTS assigned, there is no use of audio on the test. In the past, these students, who wouldn't have needed to have headphones to test, had to select play audio and affirm they could hear the sound in order to move to the next screen. This is no longer required. Detailed instructions about this screen are provided in the test administrator's directions and manual documents. It's important that test administrators read this document before testing to know what to expect. The second update is that TTS directions for students who have TTS assigned as a designated support will require students to listen to the entire direction screen before they are able to advance to the next screen on their initial login. Once students have listened to directions and begun the test, if they pause and log in again later, they will not be required to listen to all directions again. This update may impact students who are not using TTS directions, but who select play on a directions screen. Once play is selected, the directions have to be read and the student does not have any option to stop and move to the next screen. Again, this is detailed in the test administrator's directions and manual documents, and it's very important that test administrators review the information there before administering the test so they are prepared. There are a few occasions where an initial online test administration session includes students who are taking more than one test. For example, a makeup session of students who were absent during various test administrations, or some off-site test administration schedules require multiple students to take different tests at the same time. This should only be done if there is no other option. It is not the ideal administration environment. However, it is allowed when necessary, and it is now required that, if testing online, TTS for directions is used in these situations. This will ensure all students hear the directions specific to their tests without interruptions from students nearby. Again, this is required only for initial test administration, makeup sessions where students have previously begun but not completed a test and therefore do not need to have the directions read again, are not required to use TTS for directions. Remember that when using TTS for directions, there are a number of screens that the test administrator and students must complete together before TTS for directions begins. This can be done with the whole group of students. The initial screens are the same across tests. Paper-pencil test administration requirements have not changed. If more than one test is administered in one session, then the directions for each test must be read aloud in a way that does not interfere with any student testing. Previously, listening scripts were recorded and sent on listening CDs, and there were designated support options of audio CDs and video DVDs. These will all be sent on flash drives to align to the technology more frequently available in schools and are now referred to as audio recordings and video recordings. Grade 11 Social Studies testing time estimate has been increased from 30 minutes to 45 minutes based on our data analysis of student time spent testing. The multiplication table accommodation, which is available only for M-STEP Mathematics grades 6 and 7 for students who have an IEP or 504 plan and for whom the IEP or 504 team have determined it is appropriate, is now requested in the OEAA secure site. For previous administrations, schools that had students testing using the multiplication table requested it by emailing OEAA, and this is no longer allowed. To request the multiplication table, after you have logged into the OEAA secure site, select the Assessment Registration menu, then Material Orders, and then M-STEP Multiplication Accommodation Requests. You will be required to select the student or students the request is for from your list of pre-identified students. Once you've selected the student or students, the system will display whether the student is marked as special education in MSDS. This is required for use of the multiplication table accommodation. The last update date from MSDS is displayed in case there is a data error or if the student has a new IEP or 504 plan. If the student is not flagged special education in MSDS, but should be, you are still able to download the multiplication table, but be sure it is resolved in MSDS. When you submit the request, the multiplication table accommodation is immediately available for download from the page. There is no waiting or approval process to receive the accommodation. It will be available as soon as you submit the request. This form will be available in the secure site from March 27th through May 19th, 2023. In this section, I will discuss some important resources that are available to you as you prepare to administer the M-STEP. First is the Assessment Coordinator Training Guide. This guide provides information that takes assessment coordinators through the tasks and responsibilities done before, during, and after the administration of all Michigan statewide summative assessments. This will help you with M-STEP, but also all of the other Michigan statewide assessments as well. If you are a new assessment coordinator, it is suggested that you progress through the entire training guide in the order presented. For returning assessment coordinators, this guide can be used as a refresher. You could use sections of this guide as you approach each task, or if you run into difficulty with any assessment administration task, you can use this document as a reference material. While this training guide provides training for each task that must be done, it is not intended to replace the testing manuals, guides, and other test administration related resources that are provided. You can find this guide through the link at the top of all assessment pages. The Assessment Coordinator Training Guide webpage also includes a link to bookmarks that you can download and save to your web browser for easy links to many assessment-related websites. Other important resources for you to review as you prepare for the Spring 2023 test administration are the Guide to State Assessments and the Assessment Integrity Guide. The Guide to State Assessments includes detailed information about state assessments and is important to review. The Assessment Integrity Guide provides information on the prevention and detection of testing irregularities and guidance for follow-up and resolution of any identified testing irregularity in order to ensure all procedures before, during, and after the test administration lead to student results that accurately reflect a valid and reliable measure of each student's unique and true educational knowledge, skills, and abilities. The Assessment Integrity Guide has been updated for the Spring 2023 administration and should be reviewed for the updated testing policies. You can find these documents, plus assessment security training, by going to the M-STEP webpage. The link for the Assessment Security Modules registration is under the Assessment Training and Resources for Educators section. The M-STEP Test Administration Manual includes detailed guidelines for before, during, and after the M-STEP test administration. The Test Administration Manual provides information about the test administration policies and procedures, as well as step-by-step information for each assessment task that needs to be done before, during, and after testing. Checklists are also provided in an appendix with links to each task to help you keep track of everything that needs to be done. You will also find test administration policies, including the scratch paper policy, calculator policy, and electronic device policy, information about supports and accommodations available for the M-STEP assessment, and the incident reporting table that includes potential test irregularities and the resolution for both paper, pencil, and online test administrations. The Test Administration Manual, or TAM, has several new and updated appendices that will help you throughout the test administration. The next several slides will describe the new appendices in more detail, but this is a list of some of them. There are 3 policy appendices: the calculator, scratch paper, and electronic device policies. Only the electronic device policy is new. Next, there's a new Active Monitoring Best Practices appendix. The Incident Reporting Guide is not new, but it is still available. Next are more new appendices: how to complete an incident report, tests that require headphones, and the DRC test monitoring application. More detail on each new appendix is provided in this training. These are the rest of the appendices in the TAM. the list of important dates, the Insight Portal User Guide, the checklist for assessment coordinators separated into before, during, and after testing tasks. There's a new test administrator checklist to be used during test sessions, and the Assessment Integrity and Security for Test Administrators Appendix is also in this TAM. The next few screens will review the content of those appendices. The new electronic device policy provides clarification regarding expectations for students and staff. For students, non-testing electronic devices are not permitted during testing. They must be turned off and stored away from the work area. Testing devices cannot be used for anything other than testing during the test session, even if the student has submitted their test. During the test session, no games, internet, or other sites or applications can be accessed. For staff, the important takeaway is that attention must be focused on monitoring testing during administration. Cell phones should be only used in an emergency situation. Wearable technology is discouraged. However, if worn, it must be set to airplane mode. Test content cannot be recorded in any way, and test administrators cannot do other work while monitoring the test administration. The new Active Monitoring Best Practices Appendix provides detailed descriptions of administration practices that are required. Then, best practices are described, practices that are acceptable, and finally, prohibited practice is listed. To help facilitate faster processing of incident reports, we've added a new appendix that details the information that needs to be included in the most common types of incident reports. Those types are test not completed, which is typically unlock requests, prohibited behaviors, issues with accommodations or designated supports, and technical problems. There are also links provided for each regeneration request type. This way, users can gather documentation and send it when it's convenient instead of having to wait for MDE staff to attach it in an email. More information about this appendix will be discussed in Chapter 2 of this series. We often get questions about how to determine which tests require headphones, so we created this flowchart to help with that. You can go through each question starting at the top of this flowchart in order to determine whether headphones are required. The updated Test Monitoring Application Appendix provides detailed step-by-step instructions for how to set up the test monitoring application. It also provides screenshots for setting up the TMA and for the screens viewed by the test administrators and screens viewed by students. The Test Administrator Checklist is an optional tool that could be used by test administrators during a test session to verify that they have all of the materials required and follow required policies and procedures. This checklist is based on a document originally created by educators at Godwin Heights Public Schools. The Assessment Integrity and Security for Test Administrators Appendix is available in the Assessment Integrity Guide, the TAM, and in all the test administrators' directions and manual documents. Test administrators can read the appendix in place of the Michigan virtual modules to meet the test security training requirements. The important dates for MSTEP Spring 2023 administration is available on the MSTEP webpage at www.michigan.gov/MSTEP, and it's also available as an appendix in the TAM. To view it on the webpage, select List of Important Dates 2023 in the Current Assessment Administration section. Then you can choose Important Dates documents according to your need and preferences. There is also an Excel spreadsheet that includes the important dates for every statewide assessment administered by the MDE. This way, users can filter the dates according to the assessments and assessment windows they will administer. For example, an assessment coordinator who is responsible for all middle and high school testing could filter on MSTEP, PSAT 8-9 for grade 8, PSAT 8-9 for grade 9, PSAT 10, SAT, and ACT. Instructions for how to filter the Excel spreadsheet are included on the second tab, which is highlighted in red. In addition to the PDF and spreadsheet, a Google Calendar is also available that includes important dates by assessment program. The Google Calendar includes links to resources and help documents for each task. You can download the calendar and add it to your Google Calendar to display the important dates for each assessment program you are responsible for. Test administrators are not required to read the TAM. Instead, all test administration information and policies that test administrators need to know to administer the MSTEP are included in this one document. The test administrator's directions and manual documents are grade-specific, and they are specific to test mode. There is a separate document for each grade by test mode. It is required that test administrators read this document prior to administering the test. TTS for directions only is available as a universal tool. It is important to note that only TTS for directions is a universal tool. TTS on the test itself is still a designated support. If a school chooses to use TTS for test directions as a universal tool, the test administration directions provide a script to follow to verify student test tickets, verify the correct test, and to provide an introduction. Direction is provided for test administrators to follow in the test administrator's directions and manual. If a school does not choose to use TTS for test directions, directions are also provided for test administrators to read in the test administrator's directions and manual. Off-site testing is for schools who cannot test on-site at their school buildings. Off-site testing is used for virtual schools or schools that offer virtual instruction as their educational program. Off-site testing also occurs for individual students when a school is providing educational services to a homebound student, students are suspended during the testing window, or students are expelled with services. The off-site test administration request is found under the Assessment Registration tab in the OEAA Secure site. Select Off-site Test Administration Request. The window to submit off-site test administration requests is open now through May 18, 2023. I'm going to take a few minutes here to review student supports and accommodations. During testing, issues with supports and accommodations are a frequent testing irregularity that is reported through our incident reporting tool. An accurate identification of student supports and accommodations before testing begins can help prevent a lot of these issues from occurring. So I'm going to walk through what they are, some suggestions for helping keep track of what supports each student needs, and then how to assign them in the DRC Insight portal. First, when we speak about universal tools, these are tools that are available to all students. An example of this would be the highlighter. It's available on each item on the online test for all students, and schools are allowed to provide highlighters for paper pencil testers to students. Just make sure they're not using it on the answer document. This is a tool for everyone. Students can use it if they find it helpful. Designated supports are available for students based on their specific need. These are decided by educators, and they should be supports that are used in day-to-day instruction. The most common example of a designated support is TTS for items only. Again, this should be decided individually by student, never assigned to a whole class, grade, or content area, and it should be something that the student is using in day-to-day instruction. Finally, accommodations are available for students whose IEP or 504 plan documents the need for this accommodation. An example of this would be the multiplication table for grades 6 and 7 mathematics. It is only allowed for students who have an IEP or 504 plan, and that plan must specifically indicate the need for a multiplication table during M-STEP testing in order for the accommodation to be allowed. To help clarify about text-to-speech, or TTS, there are 3 different types of TTS. TTS for directions, TTS for items only, or just TTS, and TTS passage. TTS for directions is a universal tool available to any student, and its usage should be decided by the district or building assessment coordinator. TTS is a designated support. It reads only the items on the test and can be assigned based on the specific need of the student. TTS passage is an accommodation that is available for grades 6 and 7 ELA only. TTS passage reads the passages and the items. This can only be assigned if TTS or read aloud is listed in the student's IEP or 504 plan. This is not available as an accommodation at all for anyone in grades 3 through 5 ELA because it would change the construct or what is being measured of the test. This slide reviews what is included for TTS and for TTS passage. TTS is available in all content areas, and it will read questions and answer options. Science and social studies contexts are also read when TTS is assigned. These tests are assessing student knowledge of science and social studies, so TTS for science and social studies does read the context. TTS passage for grades 6 and 7 ELA will read the passages as well as the question and answer options. It's important that you take time before testing to create a process that you will use to review which tools students are using in the classroom as a first step in thinking about supports and accommodations on the tests. Then you should work with your team to determine if there is a match between what is used in the classroom and what is available on the M-STEP. Do not review the list of available designated supports and accommodations and then try to fit them to the student or students. Start with what happens in the classroom. Then find what matches in the Supports and Accommodations Guidance document. You can find the Supports and Accommodations Guidance document on the M-STEP webpage at www.michigan.gov/mstep under the Student Supports and Accommodations heading. There is some good information in there, including some template documents that will help you keep track of what you should and should not be assigning for students. Make sure you take a look at this document. Before testing, which means now, you should meet with staff who are involved in students' day-to-day instruction, including special education staff, to determine what students need during testing. Once you have this information, either using the template provided on the M-STEP webpage or in another format that you have, then you should assign all of the universal tools, designated supports, or accommodations in the DRC Insight portal. Once this is done, make sure that your test administrators are made aware of all supports and accommodations that students need in their test sessions. This is important because not every support or accommodation is necessarily delivered through the testing engine, and if there are any issues with anything, the students will be notifying their test administrator. Some schools use Google Sheets or other collaborative software to make sure that everyone's aware of what is needed. Again, you can use this process or another process, but the important thing is that all test administrators know every support and accommodation that each student should or should not have in each test session. This is an important role of the assessment coordinator. Then, once everyone knows everything they need to know, you'll need to make sure they have access to all of the materials to provide the supports and accommodations. This means things like headphones for TTS, or calculators for grade 6 or 7 students who are using a handheld calculator. For online testing, you assign students universal tools, designated supports, and accommodations in the DRC Insight portal to ensure that students receive the appropriate supports during testing. You can see whether a support is a universal tool, abbreviated UT, designated support, abbreviated DS or accommodation, abbreviated AC, in the DRC Insight portal on the screen where you assign them. Make sure that you are working with educators to assign these appropriately. Also, you must assign all designated supports and accommodations before you print any test tickets. If test tickets are printed before you have assigned designated supports and accommodations, they may not be available on the student's tests. For paper pencil testing, there are two important reminders. First, it is required that the assessment coordinator or test administrator complete the bubbles indicating which designated supports or accommodations the student used during testing. Second, when testing paper pencil, always use the answer document that aligns to the test booklet. For students using accommodated versions of the test, such as Braille, the correct answer document is included in the Braille kit. Use the answer document that comes in the kit to avoid any errors. This section provides information about required test schedules and test time estimates that should be used when preparing your test schedule. Before testing begins, you're going to need to create your building or district testing schedule. These are required to be maintained at the district for 3 years, and they must include the information included on this slide: district and building name, building assessment coordinator's name, the date, location, and starting and ending time of the test administration, the assessment grade and content, and finally, test administrator and proctor names for each testing session. There's a template available in the Assessment Integrity Guide, or the AIG, on the MSTEP webpage. Again, that's www.michigan.gov/MSTEP under the Current Assessment Administration section. You are not required to use the template. You can create your own, but you need to have this information on it. You can see here the estimates for the time students spend testing. For your schedules, you need to add in time for test administrators to read directions, for students to log in, and for other administrative tasks. There are MDE recommendations for how to schedule in the MSTEP TAM. Also, remember that MSTEP is not a timed test. Students need to be provided adequate time for them to complete testing. For ELA, student testing should take approximately 2 hours. Math, grades 3 through 5, is estimated for an hour and a half, and 2 hours in grades 6 and 7. And science is estimated in 5th grade for an hour and a half. Finally, 60 minutes is the estimate for 5th grade social studies. These are the grade 8 test time estimates. The MSTEP tests are estimated in an hour and a half for science and 1 hour for social studies. You can also see the time estimate for PSAT 8-9 is 2 hours and 35 minutes. Remember that MSTEP is not a time test, so these are estimates. Whereas PSAT is a time test, so make sure you follow the procedures in the PSAT test manuals when administering PSAT 8-9. Here we have MME test timings, and again, the MSTEP times are just estimates as it is an untimed test. This is not the case for other programs, so make sure you're following procedures for the College Board and ACT Work Keys tests. But for MSTEP, the science estimate is an hour and a half, and social studies, which reflects the increase made for spring 2023, is 45 minutes. As you use these time estimates to help prepare for test administration, this slide will help your planning by clarifying which staff are eligible to be test administrators. All test administrators must be trained in the administration policies for the MSTEP administration, read the Assessment Integrity Guide, or complete the Assessment Security Training modules, and read the test administrator's directions and manual documents before administering a test. They must also sign the OEAA Security Compliance Form before administering any M-STEP assessment. Test administrators are selected from the list on this slide, which is taken from the Assessment Integrity Guide. Test administrators can be teachers or other licensed educational administrators, paraprofessionals, or non-licensed administrative personnel or substitute teachers. Anyone who administers the test must complete the required training and complete the OEAA Security Compliance Form before administration. This section reviews the tasks that need to be done in the OEAA Secure site. Here's a website that you'll want to bookmark for detailed information to perform each of these tasks: www.michigan.gov/secure site training. This training page has documents and videos of each task that occurs in the secure site, including all of the tasks that I will discuss here. Make sure you bookmark that page or make a note of it somewhere. It has a lot of very helpful resources. Again, it's www.michigan.gov/secure site training. The OEAA Secure site is a site that you will use quite frequently throughout testing. It's an OEAA web application that is used for many testing tasks, and a lot of those tasks are done before testing, but there are also a few during and after testing. This slide sorts these tasks into tasks that are done before, during, and after testing. Before testing, you go to the secure site to pre-identify students for state assessments. If you have students testing with paper pencil, you can print barcode labels from the secure site. Material ordering happens in the secure site. And finally, before February 20th, you can group students into online sessions in the secure site to be pulled into the DRC Insight portal. During testing, off-site test administration requests are completed in the secure site. New this year is the multiplication table accommodation requests that are completed in the secure site. And finally, incident reporting is in the secure site as well. After testing, you'll do tasks for the accountable students and test verification process in the secure site, and this is where you can access student test scores, download data files, and access the reports that are available in the dynamic score reporting site. You'll need access to the OEAA Secure site throughout testing. If you don't already have access, this slide tells you how to fix that. You log into the OEAA Secure site using your MEAS login and password. That will bring up the Request Access page, which gives you direction for how to request access. If you need detailed instructions or additional help, then the Secure Site training page can help you. Go to www.michigan.gov/secure site training and click right at the top of the page, How do I get access to the secure site? The OEAA pre-ID'd students based on your fall MSDS General Collection Student Count Day on January 4th. There are no additional polls for pre-ID that are done by MDE after that date, which means that any enrollment changes after this needs to be inputted by you into the OEAA Secure site. Depending on the changes that you've had in enrollment and the accuracy of the MSDS General Collection data for your school or district, you can pre-ID students one at a time using the student search, or if you have a lot of students to add, you can follow the pre-ID file format and template to upload a lot of students. Or if you are confident in the accuracy of the data in MSDS, you can use the MSDS copy function on the secure site. There are step-by-step instructions available for each of these methods of pre-ID on the secure site training page. Again, it's www.michigan.gov/secure site training. This is a screenshot of the student search page with obfuscated data on it. That first column lists the student's UIC, and then where the arrow is where the student's name is. Then you can see birth date and gender. As a note, you can search by student information, which is what is selected here in the upper left, or by UIC or by barcode. MDE does suggest that you use or at least verify the student UIC number. There are a lot of students who have the same name or similar name, and even birth date isn't always different among the students in the state who have the same name. We get a few incident reports each year where the wrong UIC for the student has been pre-ID'd for testing, and then they complete the test with the wrong UIC and it's showing as out of level because they took a test that is in a different grade level than the actual student, or the student who is actually expected to test, according to MSDS, is listed as not tested because the student took the test under the wrong UIC. These are difficult to resolve because it's a manual process to move student test data from one UIC to another, and it is not something that is often done. So be sure that you pre-ID the correct student with the correct UIC, and you can avoid all of that. Once you've found the student and you know that you have the correct UIC, then you can select Pre-ID Student. That is this screen that you see here. You'll need to make sure that you pre-ID to the correct test cycle, ISD, district, school, and grade. Also, you can see the required information is listed here in red. At the bottom of the screen, you can see other student information, such as if the student is identified as an English learner, former English learner, special education, homeschooled, migrant, economically disadvantaged, homeless, in foster care, or military connected. This is where you'll enter the test mode, paper, pencil, or online, and you can also assign your reporting codes or research codes here. Here we will discuss pre-identification using the pre-ID file upload. On the login screen, you can download the pre-ID file upload template. This is important because you need to use this specific layout in order for your upload to work in the OEAA secure site, and you need to follow the codes and abbreviations that are listed in the template. I'll show you a part of the template on the next page. This is just a section of the pre-ID file upload template. You can see that it shows you the field length, the data type to be inputted, and then the field name and the specific information about how to complete each row. You can see, for example, the SDS grade code must be inputted, and you input kindergarten as 00, not K or just 0. You could also see the requirements for inputting the student's last, first, and middle name, and the specific codes used to identify student ethnicity. Again, this is a part of the pre-ID file upload template. If you are going to pre-ID using this method, make sure that you follow the requirements listed here. So here's your pre-ID file upload document. It has the columns already listed. You just input the data according to the requirements listed in the pre-ID file layout. Just as an idea, which at this point would have to be for next year, some schools will maintain this document from student count day in the fall up until it is time to pre-ID students, so that this information has been inputted as students enroll, and then it's all ready to go when you are ready to validate your pre-ID student list. This screen shows you the MSDS copy process for pre-identifying students. You can see in the box under Pre-ID Method, the MSDS copy function has been selected. It's important that you use the information as submitted in MSDS in order for this to work and in order to make sure that you have accurate reporting of results, both for the students who are expected to test for accountability calculations, but also in order to view the students' results. Once you've inputted the information on the previous screen, you will view this screen, again obfuscated for privacy. You need to select the destination test cycle, That is the test cycle that you are pre-identifying the student to test in, and then grade and content area. Here you can see the Mass Update Assessment screen. From here, you can change the testing mode to online or paper pencil. You copy students from M-Step to MyAccess. Remember, when you do this, to remove the student from M-Step for that content area. And you can copy students from one component of MME to another component, all done as groups of students instead of individually. I have a note here about pre-identification of students for MyAccess. Each year, MDE receives a few incident reports where a student has completed both the M-Step and MyAccess assessments in the same content area. In order for this to occur, you have a student who sat down twice to take a test in the same content area, which is not something anyone wants to see happen. One reason that this happens is that an assessment coordinator does not remove the student from M-Step. This is not automatic. Make sure that you remove students from M-Step who are taking MyAccess in that content area. Another issue can happen if you haven't finalized your pre-ID list before students are pulled into the DRC Insight portal, which this year happened on February 20th. If you have any students who are taking MyAccess in a content area that are still pre-ID'd to M-Step in that content area on February 20th, then they will be pulled into the DRC Insight portal. And once a student is pulled into the DRC Insight portal, they cannot be removed. When this happens, if the student is listed in a test session, then there will be test tickets generated and printed when you print the test tickets. Once there is a printed test ticket, it is natural for the test administrator to administer the test, assuming that if a student has a test ticket, then the student should test. One way that some schools have solved this potential problem is to create a test session that is called not testing or something like that, where they can put those students so that there is no test ticket printed out and therefore no reason for the test to be taken. Remember, accountability calculations are made based on MSDS enrollment data, not what's in the DRC Insight portal. So it is not an issue if you have students who are in the DRC Insight portal as not testing. If you need more information about how to use this screen, there are detailed step-by-step instructions available on the Secure Site training page at www.michigan.gov/securesitetraining. The pre-ID student report is available so that you can view students who are pre-identified for testing, including by grade and content area, mode of testing, that is paper, pencil, or online, and demographic information based on what exists in MSDS. You can use this page to unassign students from an assessment if you notice any errors in your pre-ID list. Remember, unassigning a student from a test in the OEAA Secure Site does not remove the accountability to test. Accountability is based on MSDS information. Here is what the pre-ID student report looks like. Each column can be filtered so that you can look at this list based on any of the listed categories. You can also see the total count pre-ID'd by content area and total according to the test mode. Remember, you can unassign students from testing if you see them on this list, but they should not be. This is another opportunity to verify that your students who are taking MyAccess in a content area are not also pre-ID'd for M-Step. Search by test period and then select Spring 2023. Barcode labels are required for all paper pencil answer documents. You must have a student barcode label on each answer document. If you pre-identified by February 15th, then barcode labels will be printed and shipped with your initial material order. If not, then you'll have to print them from the OEAA Secure Site. To find barcode labels in the Secure Site, from this screen, you search by test cycle, ISD, district, and school, and you can filter your results by student name, UIC, grade, or test mode, paper pencil or online, to print barcode labels. This note pops up on your screen when you select Print Barcodes on the lower left of the search results. There are specific labels and settings that are required when you are printing your barcodes, so make sure you read this so that your barcodes are printed correctly. Initial material orders were done through the OEAA Secure site and are based on your pre-ID counts. Additional material orders will also be done in the OEAA Secure site. This function is available once the IMOs have arrived in schools. Dates for material delivery are listed here, and in the Important Dates documents, March 27th through the 29th is the default date range, and April 3rd through the 5th are the alternate dates in case your school or district has a conflict for the default dates. Deliveries for AMOs are based on ordered materials. This is the Initial Material Order screen, or IMOs. You search by test cycle, and then you can select your shipping destination and your delivery dates. The first date listed is the default date, but you can change that in case there's something happening in your district or building during that week. The address listed is based on the address for the M-STEP coordinator in EEM. Make sure you verify that this is correct so that your materials are sent to the correct place. IMOs are automatically generated based on your pre-ID count. This window has closed for spring 2023, but you can view your order from this screen. You can still place material orders if you have any need for additional materials. The window for additional material orders is listed here, April 6th through May 2nd. Orders are accepted through noon on May 2nd. These dates are also listed in the Important Dates documents. We are asked frequently what comes in the initial material orders, which are based on the pre-ID count. This slide lists materials that are sent to all schools, and then the table lists materials sent to schools with only online tests and schools that have any paper pencil tests. Everyone receives OEAA security compliance forms and the test administrator's directions and manual, either online and/or paper pencil, or both, depending on their pre-ID count. The test administrator's directions and manuals are sent at a rate of 1 per 20 pre-ID'd students. Then for schools that have online testing in their pre-ID count, if they have 6th or 7th grade students, they will also receive 1 graph paper per student. For schools that have any student pre-ID'd for paper pencil testing, they will also receive blank labels that you can print barcodes on, listening scripts, and listening recordings. Of course, the test booklets and answer documents, and your printed pre-ID labels based on the students who are pre-ID'd to paper pencil testing on or before February 15th. Return kits are now only sent to schools that have students pre-ID'd for paper pencil testing. If you had no students pre-ID'd for paper pencil testing during the initial material order window, but subsequently order paper pencil materials during the additional material order window, you will be sent the return kit with your additional material order. Finally, any schools that ordered any accommodated materials will receive those according to the materials ordered. Make sure that you inventory all of your secure materials when you receive them. Use the packing slip that's included in your delivery to verify that everything listed on the packing slip is included in your order. If there are any secure materials that are required to be returned to the scoring contractor, such as listening scripts or listening recordings, accommodated versions of the test, test booklets, etc., that are not returned, you will be required to locate the missing materials. You cannot say at that point that you didn't receive them. You need to tell us that at the time of delivery. If you do inventory and there are any materials that are on your packing list that you did not receive, call 1-877-560-8378 and select option 3. Or you can send us an email at mde-oeaa@michigan.gov so that we can locate the missing secure materials. This is important because failure to return all secured materials may result in the district or school being placed on a future monitoring list. On random visits to schools, management of secure materials comes up as an issue in some schools. So this slide is a reminder. All secure materials must be retained in a secure, locked location within the school. This cannot be just in a locked office, like on the principal or assessment coordinator's desk, because it's possible that the office can be left unattended and the materials are not secure. They need to be locked in a cabinet or drawer when not in use. Next, all secure materials must be distributed and collected each day. Secure materials for online testing are test rosters and test tickets and any used scratch or graph paper. For paper pencil testing, secure materials include test booklets, used answer documents, L1 glossaries, any accommodated version of the test, flash drives containing listening recordings, reader scripts, used scratch or graph paper, and more. Make sure you review the TAM if you have any questions about what are secure materials. Next, we will discuss the tasks that are completed in the DRC Insight portal. The DRC Insight portal is the system used to manage online test sessions, assign designated supports and accommodations, to print and manage test tickets, and during testing to monitor student testing status. Access to the DRC Insight portal is granted through the OEAA Secure site based on role assignment in the OEAA Secure site. If you need help getting access to the DRC Insight portal, go to the Secure Site training page at www.michigan.gov/securesitetraining and select the document under Security called How Do I Get Access to the DRC Insight portal? The DRC Insight portal will become available for online test administration tasks beginning on March 3rd. Students who are pre-ID'd and put into online test sessions in the OEAA Secure site by February 20th will be copied into the DRC Insight portal and put into test sessions. After this date, you still must pre-ID students in the OEAA Secure site, and these students will be copied into the DRC Insight portal 3 times a day. These students who are pre-ID'd after February 20th will need to be added manually to test sessions in the DRC Insight portal. User access to the DRC Insight portal is required for both technology coordinators and building and district assessment coordinators. The roles to be assigned in the OEAA Secure site are listed here. They haven't changed from prior administrations. If test administrators are going to use the test monitoring application, they will need to have secure access. Again, if they are not using the test monitoring application, then they don't need secure access. They can access student tutorials, mini-modules, and the TAMs without access. If they are using the test monitoring application, then they do need access and they should be assigned either public or non-public online test administrator roles in the OEAA Secure site. Then they will get the email from the DRC Insight portal with information about how to access their account. This table shows who needs access and the associated Secure site role in order for them to have the correct access. Technology coordinators must have access, and the Secure site roles they should be assigned are listed here. Either district or school level access, and for school level access it is either public or non-public schools. District and building coordinators also must have access to work in the DRC Insight portal. They are sorted the same way as technology coordinators, either district or school level access, and the school access is separated into public and non-public schools. Test administrators only need access if they will be using the test monitoring application. If you are not using the test monitoring application, there is no need for test administrators to have secure access. If they are, then they should be assigned either public school online test administrator or non-public school online test administrator roles in the secure site. Once your pre-ID is done, test sessions are set up and you have assigned all universal tools, designated supports, and accommodations, then you can print your test tickets. A quick reminder, you have to assign universal tools, designated supports, and accommodations before test tickets are generated. If you print your test tickets and then add a support afterwards, the support may not be available when the student logs into test. To print your test tickets, log into the DRC Insight portal, select Test Management, and then go to Manage Test Sessions. Complete the administration, entity information, grade, and content area, and select Show Sessions. This will bring back all of the test sessions according to your filtered results. You can select Test Session, Test Tickets to Print, or you can select Print All Tickets to print all of the test tickets for the filtered results shown. Test tickets can also be printed individually. You select the Edit Print icon shown in the first image, and then select the student or students whose test ticket you are printing, and then select Print Selected. The test monitoring application in the DRC Insight portal allows users to view student testing activity during the test session. You can view when students have logged into the test, what item number they are working on, whether they've paused their test, or if they're inactive. These next few screens will discuss how to use the test monitoring application. First, we will show how to set up test sessions with or without the test monitoring application. Navigate to the Manage Test Sessions screen so you can show test sessions. Step-by-step directions for this are provided on the slide, but you just log into the portal, select Test Management from the drop-down menu, then Manage Test Sessions. That will let you search for the appropriate parameters and select Show Sessions so you can view this screen here. This screen has the red box around the Test Monitoring and Restricted Access menus. These are related but different boxes. The Test Monitoring menu is where you decide whether you're going to use the test monitoring application. You have three choices. It defaults to none, which means the test monitoring application will not be available for the test session. Select this if your test administrators do not have access or are not using the application. The other options are optional or required. Optional means that a test administrator could use the test monitoring application during testing, but if they choose not to for some reason, students can still log into the test without a monitoring code. When optional is selected, only students who correctly enter the monitoring code will appear on the test administrator's test monitoring dashboard. Required means that the students will not be able to log into the test unless they have the monitoring code. It requires that the test administrator be logged into the DRC Insight portal and provide the students with the monitoring code in order for them to be able to log into the test. Next is the Restricted Access menu. Use this only if you are using the test monitoring application. There are two options: false, the default value, or true. True is only an option if the test monitoring menu is set to required. Then, with restricted access set to true, students will be required to enter the monitoring code and will go into a waiting room instead of right into the test when they submit the correct monitoring code. Test administrators will have to admit students to the test from the waiting room. You can choose Required in the test monitoring menu and False in restricted access. This would require the students to submit the monitoring code, but then they would log directly into the test without going to the waiting room. We will discuss this more and see these screens on the next few slides. To view the test monitoring dashboard, the test administrator logs into the DRC Insight portal. Then, from the My Application drop-down menu, under Test Administration, selects Test Monitoring. That pulls up this screen. The monitoring code is displayed on this screen, marked here with the arrow. This is the code that the test administrator needs to provide to students in order for them to register to the test session. This screen is a sample of when the test session is set up to Optional in the Test Monitoring menu. The student has the box to enter the monitoring code, but it is possible to continue without entering a monitoring code. If the test session had been left at the default of None in the Test Monitoring menu, then the monitoring code input wouldn't be visible on the screen at all. If the test session were set up to be Required in the Test Monitoring menu, then the Continue button wouldn't be active until the student inputted a monitoring code. If the Restricted Access menu is set to True, this is the screen that the student sees after they've provided the correct monitoring code. They cannot start testing until the test administrator admits them to the test session from the dashboard in the DRC Insight portal, which we will see on the next slide. This is the test administrator view of the waiting room. The red next to the Waiting Room tab indicates there is one student waiting to test. Test administrators admit students to the test session from this screen. This is the test monitoring dashboard that test administrators can view during testing. It shows students who are logged in, their assessment, test status, navigation in the test, and what item they are working on. The testing statuses are active, meaning they are actively testing, waiting, or in the waiting room. Inactive, which means they have not navigated in the test for 5 minutes or longer. Paused, they have paused the test. Exited, they exited, but did not complete or submit the test. And completed, which means they submitted their test. For progress in the test, on CAT tests, it displays NA because the item count varies among students. That's everything you need to know about the test monitoring application. All of this information is available in the DRC Insight Portal User Guide, and it's an appendix in the Test Administration Manual with even more details. There are mini modules, each no longer than 5 minutes, that explain in detail how to do each function in the DRC Insight Portal, including the test monitoring application that we just went through. Once you are logged in, go to General Information, then select the Documents tab and filter on Mini Modules and select Show Documents. It is important that students are aware of how the items on the test work and the tools that are available to them before testing day. This ensures that students can focus on the content and not the testing engine on testing day. There are student tutorials and online tools training, or OTTs, that should be used. You can launch Insight, and the tutorials are the yellow link at the bottom of the page, and you can see the OTTs listed under each assessment logo. You can also access them from the MSTEP webpage as long as you use a Chrome browser. Go to the Parent-Student Information section and select the link Online Practice for MSTEP ELA Math, Science, and Social Studies. The page that opens has a link to the OTTs on the top portion of the page. To prepare students for testing, MDE recommends that a teacher view the tutorials with students as a class and then model the use of the OTTs. Once students are familiar with this, then they should have an opportunity to practice with the OTTs on the device that they will be using during testing. The image here shows you what the tutorial looks like. They're each a short video that focuses on one thing in the test. They use a child's voice, and there is closed captioning on each tutorial. Building and district assessment coordinators are required to provide training to test administrators before testing. Test administration training includes training in all test administration policies and procedures, including the electronic device policy, scratch paper policy, calculator policy, and requirements for the use of designated supports and accommodations. All test administrators must also sign the OEAA Security Compliance Form and read the test administrator's directions and manual documents for the tests they will administer. Assessment security training is also required. One of either completing the assessment security modules on Michigan Virtual or reading the assessment security for test administrator documents is required, not both. The Assessment Security for Test Administrators document is available as an appendix in the Test Administrator's Directions and Manual documents, the Test Administration Manual, and the Assessment Integrity Guide. Here is a reminder about the scratch paper and calculator policies. The full policies are available in the Test Administration Manual and in the Test Administrator's Directions and Manual documents. For scratch paper, it is available as a universal tool. On the mathematics test, graph paper is required for grades 6 and 7 and optional for grades 3 through 5. Don't forget that used scratch paper is a secure material. Be sure to collect after testing for secure destruction. I discussed the calculator policy at the beginning of this presentation, but again, you can find this on the MSTEP webpage, in the TAM, and in the Test Administrator's Directions and Manual documents. And again, there are no changes in the calculator policy for mathematics. The update was to allow a basic calculator for grade 5 science and a scientific calculator for grades 8 and 11 science. Are you signed up for the Spotlight? It's our weekly newsletter that includes all of the important information you need to know throughout the year. It comes out on Thursday afternoon. If you're not signed up yet, go to www.michigan.gov/mstep, select the Spotlight logo, and you can sign up there. Thanks for joining me for this first chapter of the 2023 MSTEP Administration Training. You can see our contact information here if you have any questions. Email mde-oeaa@michigan.gov or call 877-560-8378 and follow the prompts. Also, if you have ideas, suggestions, or ways that you manage your test administration tasks that you think other schools might find helpful, send us an email. We include those in Spotlight articles, and all of the helpful hints that you see in the TAM came from tips from folks in the field. Let us know what's working for you. Make sure that you join me for Chapter 2 of this training, where we will discuss the tasks that need to be done during testing.